All right, today we're going to pick up discussions on 30, 60, 90 triangles. We already know that there's a special type of triangle, a 45, 45, 90. Today we're going to look at the 30, 60, 90. So the very first thing that's important for you to know about a 30, 60, 90 is how to identify the different sides. Because in a 30, 60, 90, there's legs, but the legs are different from each other. If you remember in the 45, 45, 90 triangle, the legs were congruent because it was an isosceles right triangle. Here the legs are different. So I'm going to draw a right triangle. This right triangle is not going to be to scale. And if you look at this picture up here, you see that in a scaled version of a 30, 60, 90, there is a shorter leg and there is a longer leg. And I'm going to label the shorter leg SL. When I say SL, I mean the shorter leg. And when I say LL, I mean the longer leg. And then, of course, hype means hypotenuse. All right. So, first of all, if I just give you a right triangle, you don't know it's special. But if I give you a right triangle and one other angle, then can't you compute the third angle? Yeah, because 180 minus 120 is 60. So if I give you either the 60-degree angle or the 30-degree angle and the right angle, you automatically know you have a 30, 60, 90 triangle. Now, based on what we know about angle measures and side lengths, where must always the biggest side in the triangle be?
The hypotenuse.
Opposite the hypotenuse. Opposite the right angle. So the biggest side is going to be the hypotenuse because the longest side has to be opposite the biggest angle. Based on that logic, where do you think the shortest side is always going to be?
Across from the 30 degrees.
Yep, across from the smallest angle, which in the case of a 30, 60, 90 triangle, the SL will always be opposite 30 degrees. And that leaves the LL to be opposite 60 degrees. So even if the figure you can't tell from looking at the figure, even though you can't tell from looking at the figure which side is longer and which leg is shorter, you can look at the angle measures and make that determination. Very, very important that you're able to do that. Because if you don't set up the triangle right, you're not going to get the right answers. All right, so let me draw one for you, and let's see if you can set it up. This is not to scale, but I want you to label side X, side Y, and side Z. I want you to label them as LL, SL, and HYP, respective with where they're supposed to go. All right, where was, what's X? Which side is X?
Longer leg.
It's the LL. What's Y? SL. And what's Z? Hype. Everybody okay with doing that? All right, so based on this information, I'm going to give you 4 formulas. Now, you're going to have to memorize these formulas. I'm going to write them out here. I've also put them up on the board for us to review back to throughout the day. So if you don't write them down to where you can see them, if you turn the page or something like that, then they're on the board. If you're doing this at home, you might want to get out a note card and write these down on a note card so that you can have them right next to you while you work through some of the problems. So it's important that when you're working with the 30, 60, 90 triangle, everything really kind of runs through the shorter leg. So you should, if you don't know what the length of the shorter leg is, that should always be the first thing you find. And the shorter leg in relationship to the longer leg, if you take the longer leg and divide it by the square root of 3, you will get the shorter leg. That always works. We're not going to go through and do a proof about why that works. I'm just going to tell you, and at this point, you're just going to accept. And the shorter leg is always the hypotenuse divided by 2. So if I start out with the hypotenuse, I can find the shorter leg. If I start out with the longer leg, I can find the shorter leg just by performing those two calculations. If I start out with the shorter leg, then the longer leg equals the shorter leg times the square root of 3, and the hypotenuse is equal to 2 times the shorter leg. So if I started out with longer leg, I would find shorter leg, and then I would find hypotenuse. If I start out with hypotenuse, I would find shorter leg, and then I would find longer leg. And if I start out with shorter leg, then I would find longer leg and hypotenuse. So those are the only formulas that you have to memorize. We okay with that? All right. Let's move forward. So in dealing with a 30, 60, 90 triangle, I can find the missing values. So first of all, I always want to find the shorter leg if I don't have it. In this case, do I have the shorter leg? No. Which one is the shorter leg? D. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find D. Now the longer leg was equal to what? 5. And the hypotenuse was equal to F. All right, so neither one of those two are immediately, or this is immediately solved, but this one I'm going to have to wait and do it second. So the longer leg, I've got that information. I can now find the shorter leg. So D is equal to the shorter leg, and the shorter leg is equal to the longer leg divided by the square root of 3. So in this case, the longer leg was 5 divided by square root 3. Now the problem says leave your answer in simplest radical form. Is this simplest radical form?
No, because you can't have a radical.
Right. It's not simplest radical form because you're not allowed to have a square root in the denominator. So I need to rationalize it. So I will multiply by root 3 over root 3, and that gives me 5 root 3 over 3. So that's the answer to D. Is everybody okay with that? I'm going to go ahead and show you how to find F too. So F is equal to the hypotenuse, which is equal to 2 times the shorter leg. Well, what was the shorter leg? 5 root 3 over 3. So what do you think you'd do to solve that problem?
Multiply.
What would you multiply?
2 by everything.
Yeah, just the 2 times the 5. So 2 times 5 is 10. So that'll be 10 root 3 over 3. That makes sense that this is twice as much as that because 5 is half of 10. What?
Why don't you multiply the other numbers?
Well, you can't multiply 2 by a radical because this is inside and that's outside. So if there wasn't a coefficient in front of the radical, you would assume it'd be 1, and you just always multiply that by 1. You don't multiply 2 by the denominator because 2 is considered to be the fraction 2 over 1. And so what does the 3 get multiplied by? It gets multiplied by a 1.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to give you a problem to solve. And I'm going to say that you don't have this variable. So I'm going to put the F up here. And I'm going to make this a variable. And this variable is going to be, I'm going to make it 9. So I want you to solve for D and F. If you know that this value right here is 9, the formulas are on the board. All right, so hopefully you recognize that you had the hypotenuse, which was 9. And the first thing we need to do is solve for the shorter leg. So the shorter leg is going to be the hypotenuse divided by 2. You could just leave it as 9/2 if you want to. Because that, I mean, you could go to 4.5 since 4.5 is terminating, but you could also just leave it as 9/2. And then the longer leg is going to be the shorter leg. So the shorter leg is equal to 9/2, so D is equal to 9/2, because D was the shorter leg. The longer leg, which is equal to F, is just a substitution of the shorter leg, 9/2 times the square root of 3. And so that's just going to be 9 root 3 over 2. Or you could put 4.5 root 3. Any questions? All right. So now let's apply it. So you've got this pendant. I'm going to redraw the sketch so I can draw on the pendant. The pendant is an equilateral triangle. So what do we know about equilateral triangles?
All the sides are equal.
All the sides are equal. What else?
All the angles are equal.
All the angles are equal, which makes them all what? If they're all equal, they all have to be 60 degrees, don't they? Because some has to be 180. So I also have dropped the altitude or the height of the pendant. What do you know about the height in an isosceles triangle? It's also the what?
The length of the leg?
No.
I'm just guessing.
An altitude is a median, is a
Right.
perpendicular bisector, is a angle bisector when you have equilateral or isosceles triangles. So I know that this angle right here is going to be 30. So it's a 30, 60, 90 triangle in which one of the legs, the longer or the shorter, is equal to 18. Is 18 the longer leg or is 18 the shorter leg? It's the longer leg because it's opposite the 60 degrees. That's why at the beginning of the lesson I told you it was crucial to be able to map out all the legs and know what leg goes with what angle. So in this case, when I dropped the altitude, I divided this equilateral triangle into two special right triangles, 30, 60, 90 right triangles. So I know that the longer leg is equal to 18. And I'm asked for S. What is S equal to?
18 over.
No. What side of the... Is it the shorter leg or the hypotenuse? It's the hypotenuse. So I know in finding the hypotenuse and knowing the longer leg, what's the first thing I need to do? I need to find the shorter leg. So the shorter leg is going to equal
18 over root 3.
the longer leg divided by root 3, which indeed will be 18 over root 3. Is that simplified?
No.
Do I care?
No.
Technically, right now, I don't care about simplified because what am I going to do at the end?
Change it to millimeters.
I'm going to round it to the nearest tenth. So I'm just going to put it all in the calculator at the end anyway. So I don't think I'm going to waste a lot of time trying to simplify. You could simplify if you wanted to. If you simplify at 6 root 3, maybe that's easier to work with. All right. So I'm going to leave it like this. So the hypotenuse is equal to 2 times the shorter leg, which in this case would be 2 times 18 divided by root 3. However, I'm supposed to round this off. So I think I'll just put that in my calculator. So I'm going to make sure that my calculator is set into classic mode if it can change modes. I'm going to do 2 times 18 division, second function, square root, 3, enter. I get 20.78. When I round that off to the nearest tenth, that's 20.8 millimeters. So that's my answer. Now, if I'm working this problem, I can use some logic to decide if I've made a mistake or not. It doesn't always catch all of your mistakes, but what do you know about the hypotenuse in relationship to the triangle? If I'm talking about hypotenuse, and I'm talking about altitude of the triangle, or height of the triangle, if I get hypotenuse equal 15, is that possible? No. Hypotenuse has to be at least as big as what? In this case. It's got to be at least bigger than 18. So this looks reasonable. I think I'm okay with this answer. Everybody okay with that? All right, I'm going to put a spin on it. We're going to look at the same pendant. So the pendant looked like this. However, now I'm going to tell you that the side is 18, and I want you to find the height. So see if you can find the height, knowing that the side of each side of the pendant is 18. All right, so hopefully you notice you started out with what? The hypotenuse. And so I immediately want to find the shorter leg. The shorter leg is equal to the hypotenuse divided by 2. Well, 18 divided by 2 comes out very nicely to be 9. And then now that I have the hypotenuse, h is equal to the longer leg, because I know that this was the 60-degree angle. And so the longer leg is equal to the shorter leg times the square root of 3. Well, the shorter leg I just found out was 9, so 9 times the square root of 3 is my answer. So now I need to put that into the nearest tenth of a millimeter. So this is where the calculator comes in. Did you remember to put it in your calculator? 9 root 3 is equal to 15.58. That'll round off to 15.6 millimeters. So if the side was 18, then the height would be about 15.6 millimeters. Everybody okay with that? Okay. Be careful that you follow the directions on how the answer is. Simplest radical form would be stop here, but round off, take it all the way to here. I'll count off a point on a test or a quiz if you don't take it as far as you need to go. All right, let's just practice this. So here's the 30, 60, 90 triangle. Let's say that the longer leg was equal to 11 square root 3. Find the other two. All right, so we started out with the longer leg. The first thing we're going to do is find the shorter leg. The shorter leg is equal to the longer leg divided by root 3. So in this case, that's 11 root 3 divided by root 3. Oh, that was handy. The root 3's cancel out, and you're just left with 11. Everybody okay with that? And then hypotenuse is 2 times the shorter leg, which is equal to 2 times 11, which would be 22. Any questions about that one? All right, what about this problem? Let's say that you have the shorter leg, and the shorter leg is 3 on the square root of 2. Go ahead and find the longer leg and the hypotenuse. All right, we started out with the shorter leg, so we can go straight to longer leg and hypotenuse. The longer leg is the shorter leg times the square root of 3. So that would be 3 root 2 times root 3. When you're multiplying root 2 and root 3 together, that's just root 6. And that's simplified. If I break down 6, there's no pairs. Hypotenuse is 2 times the shorter leg. So that would be 2 times 3 root 2. So that's just going to be 6 on the square root of 2. Any questions about that one? All right. Here's the tricky one. Let's say we start out with a hypotenuse, and the hypotenuse is 8 on the square root of 6. Find the other two if you know the hypotenuse is 8 on the square root of 6. All right, do we have the shorter leg? No, so that's the first thing we're going to have to do. We're going to have to find the shorter leg. The shorter leg is the hypotenuse divided by 2. So that's going to be 8 root 6 divided by 2. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. So that'll just be 4 root 6. Everybody okay with that? And now, to go from shorter leg to longer leg, we multiply by root 3. So shorter leg times root 3. Hey.
Your printer cord that's doing back then anyway.
My printer cord.
Yeah, I don't know what they're talking about.
Okay. Well, I will give it to you. So SL root 3 is equal to 4 root 6 times root 3. That's going to be 4 root 18. However, root 18 is simplifiable. Did y'all remember that you could break root 18 up into root 9, root 2? So that'd be 4 times 3, root 2. Final answer for this, 12 root 2. So I might want to do a little bit of a check. I might go back for this one and put all of this stuff in my calculator. 4 root 6 is 9.7. 12 root 2 is 16.9. And 8 root 6 is 19. So this was like 12, this was like 17, and this was like 19 and a half. That seems reasonable to me. The hypotenuse was the longest, so I'm okay there. All right, anybody have any questions about what I did? All righty. There's your homework.